Hello, I'm retired Battalion Chief Larry Cockman from the Greensboro, North Carolina Fire Department History Book Committee. We're here today at the Greensboro Historical Museum. I'm standing in front of the General Green, the first steam pumper, or as they called it back then, a steamer. Today, December 9th, 2019, we are starting a new tradition of recording and preserving the heritage and culture of our retirees. Our retirees have contributed so much to the success of our great fire department. Their stories retire with them and are sometimes gone forever when they pass away. They will share their emergency calls that will always be a part of their memories forever. So sit back and listen as they carry us through their journey in the Greensboro Fire Department.
I had 38 plus 2-year sick time, so I retired with like 40 years service. I was battalion chief.
Okay.
Battalion chief, assistant training supervisor when I left. I was born off 150 in Brown Summit, North Carolina. If you own 150 and you come to the heart of Brown Summit, there used to be what they call the broom factory. I was born kind of right behind the broom factory. And I grew up there, went to Brown Summit Elementary School. We moved, I went to Gibsonville Elementary. I went to Sedalia Elementary, then I came back and graduated from Brown Summit High School. Now, I don't have any relatives, because now, when I was in training, there was this Johnson guy that we hired. His name was Jamie Johnson. He later left the department, but he was on for 4 or 5 years. And everybody asked me, said, "You know Jamie, you related to him because his last name was Johnson?" I said, "Nah, I don't know him." And then come to find out, I really did. He was in my family. When he graduated, my sister's granddaughter was married to him. So I reckon it was my niece once removed. And I didn't know it all during training. Didn't know it until graduation, and she came up talking to Uncle Neil, and I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" She said, "Well, Jamie's my husband." All right, first off, I knew nothing about the fire service. I don't think I'd ever even remember seeing a fire station. But I was working part-time at Sears Roebuck, the mail order plant, where I eventually worked for over 30 years. And there was a fireman working out there part-time, Bob Wooten. And he was always talking about his job, his primary job, in the fire department. He was always, his eyes alive, and he'd just be excited about it. So I was working 2 jobs, Sears part-time and working at Cone Revolution Mill on 3rd shift, when Bob told me, said, "Why don't you put in an application to the city? Fire department's hiring." And so I went uptown and put in an application at the fire department and the police department, both the same day. And just luckily, I reckon, the fire department called me back first. The police called me after I'd gone to the interview with Chief Powell.
Yeah, they did.
But I accepted the job at the fire department, and but prior to that, prior to Wooten telling me about it, I had no prior knowledge.
Yeah.
My starting salary was $425 a month, and I thought, how in the world am I going to spend all this money? Our training class, now back then in the 60s, when I came on, you would be hired and actually assigned a company and put out on the line prior to training. They would hire people as they needed them and waited until they had 10 or 12 people to have a training class. In my training class, there was people that had been on a week, and there was guys that had been on almost a year before we went to training. But it was like 12 or 13 of us, and we went to training, and it was 6 weeks. 6 weeks training, and in 6 weeks, you learn pretty much everything. But there's a pretty good story to this. When I got hired, it's almost like yesterday. You get there at 8 o'clock, you have your interview with Chief Powell, and sign all your paperwork and stuff, and they call Captain Scott and have him give you your clothes, you know, white shirts, dress pants, shoes, turnout gear, everything was used. You didn't get anything new. And they call battalion chief and give you your assignment, and you go to stations. But one thing that the older firefighters would do to the new hires is they would teach you what you needed to know. And I was assigned to Truck 5, but Butch Hagler, who was later deputy chief who retired, he was the driver on Engine 5, and prior to training, I thought he was the captain, really, because he's the one that taught me everything. He says, now, I'm gonna teach you knots, how to climb ladders, ropes, all this stuff, but when you go in training, you act like you don't know anything. Because if you go out there and they trying to teach you something and you act like you already know it, that's a black mark on it. My first captain was Leroy Cawthorne. He was captain on Truck 5, and at that time we were working 24/24. Like we just had 2 shifts. We worked 96 hours a week rather, and Leroy was my captain, and Horace Browning was the captain on the engine. And the old stories about them was that whenever you see guys walking around like this with fingers caught like inside of a coffee cup, captains didn't involve themselves in cleaning the station and stuff, especially by those 2 captains. And we had a good time, but hey, if you walked around like that, you knew what the guy was talking about. They said, the captain's done something. So, some of them folks from my class were Bob Oakley, Wayne Sandridge, Joe Anderson. There was no funny stories in training. Bill Osmond was our training supervisor, and his favorite saying was, I mean, there was no horse playing, joking. Reese Kent was his assistant, and he liked to cut up a little bit, but Chief Osmond, he would get on him just like he would us if he caught him kidding or playing. But anyway, Chief Osmond's favorite thing was, like when we were in the classroom, we couldn't even look out the window. When we were on that drill ground, if he caught you looking out to the street at a fire truck or something go by, his thing was, hey, if out there is more important than what I'm trying to teach you, then out there is where you need to be. This is his motto. So there was no joking, but we had a good time. There was a lot of stuff we had to learn, and we learned it. We didn't know it was a short period of time, but 6 weeks is not a long time to learn all the stuff that they throw at you in training. After being at Station 5 and answering calls and providing service to the community, then I did feel that it was worthwhile and stuff. And I was not in the military, but I did feel like I was giving back to the community in the service we were providing to the citizens. Rook, I was Rook for a long time. For rookie, and folks just call you Rook. Hey, Rook. Hey, Rook. You thought that was your name? Hey, Rook. Suitcase Johnson. I got that name. This was later on in my career, after I was captain, really, and I was on hazmat, and I left hazmat and came to 5, and Craig Smith and the guys riding the rescue there had a big sign that greeted me at the back door. Has-been Johnson. Instead of hazmat, it was has-been Johnson. And from that, the Suitcase Johnson came, because prior to the Suitcase Johnson days, I just had 2 assignments, and that was Engine 5 and Engine 2. And in 5 years, had 5 different assignments, which I enjoyed. I've never been on a hazmat. I was on hazmat twice, and I was assigned to Station 5 at that time, it was just high-level, high-angle rescue. Station 15, which is 49 now, and then back to hazmat a second time. So that's where the Suitcase Johnson, you know, it was kind of a joke between the guys that, hey, you're not any place long enough to stay. You stay packed up in a suitcase. Usually pranks was to scare you. Now there are so many that happen at Central Station, you know, you just can't, I mean, it was pranks all the time, and you're being scared all the time, ghost stories and stuff, but I was counting down at 4 when Truck 7 was temporarily reassigned to Station 4 because Truck 11, it was still Truck 1 at that time, it was riding out 11, had an accident, and something else had happened. There was 2 trucks out, and we didn't have enough trucks on the east side of town, so they reassigned Truck 7 to Engine 4 to ride out of Engine 4, so we'd have a truck closer to southeast Greensboro. So that brought Captain Lonnie Smith down to 4. We were on the same shift, and Ed Sawyer, those groups from Truck 7. And this was during the time when Nightmare on Elm Street had just come out. So I'll never forget, I was in my room, probably doing paperwork and stuff, and somebody called and said, Captain Johnson, it's telephone in the kitchen. Now we had, I'm thinking, why in the world would be telephone in the kitchen when there's telephone in the bedroom too? But anyway, so I got up, went across the apparatus floor to the kitchen, and was going to answer the phone in the kitchen. And but I went so fast because I wanted to go answer the phone and get back that, not knowing, they had Jason out there on the apparatus floor, but I went by so fast I didn't see it. So I got on the phone, said, I ain't believing this, somebody playing tricks. Hung the phone, went nobody on there, and when I started back across the apparatus floor, there was no lights, anything on. Captain Smith, Lonnie, jump out with Jason thing on, and sure enough, I was just watching that movie, and he jumped out there, and he laughed at me there. He said, "Oh, see, you scream like a woman." And sure enough, boy, I let out a yell because it really scared me because I was into that movie. So that was a good one. He got me on that. The union was active. I joined the union as soon as probation was over with, and I was either secretary or treasurer pretty much the entire time until I made battalion chief in the union. Those were hard times. You know, we were right to work state. Unions for local governmental employees was not looked on real favorably, but I always believed that you needed a say in your workplace. We had, the biggest thing we had one time was a slowdown where we come in and we knew we weren't going to ever strike, but our slowdown was, we're not going to clean up the station. And it lasted about 2 days, and I forget now what it was about, but we got whatever we wanted. But yeah, the union has always been a driving force for us, and we've kind of been a pace setters in North Carolina, and a retired member. I still have my membership. Everything changes based on the management, I reckon. We've had a lot of different types and personalities as the president of our union. We've had a lot of different types and management styles of fire chiefs. It finally meshed to where the fire chief and the union president are on one page, that they realize they are for the same thing, just they have to go at it from different angles. And that's, I think, is the biggest difference. And it's just a cultural change. The fire service don't change or don't accept change easily. And once you get on the same page, though, you can work good with each other. The camaraderie seems to have changed a little. When I came along, it was almost like a frat house, because you knew someone always had your back, that kind of thing. You could put up with joking and kidding and playing because it was considered rites of passage. You were the rookie only once. As soon as a new class got out, there was someone that was under you. So whatever tricks or pranks was pulled on you, you pulled it on them. So everybody had rites of passage, and it was nothing mean-spirited about it. It was just something you had to do, you had to put up with. And you always knew that the senior people wouldn't let it get out of hand. That, I think, is missing a little, because some of our younger people come on the department thinking, maybe they're not thinking they know everything, but they act like they know everything, and they don't want to take instructions from their older peers. So there's this sense of, hey, if you want to be like that, hey, go for it.
Right.
There's things I can help you through, but if you're going to be this way, then I won't help you get through it. All right, brotherhood in fire service today compared to when it was when I came through in the 60s and 70s. I believe it's the same, but different, because people are different. You got social media. You don't have to wait until you get to work pretty much to converse or talk with the guys you work with and stuff. So with times changing, everything changes. But the people I met in training, the guys I worked with as a recruit, as a rookie, as a firefighter 1, firefighter 2, as captain, battalion chief, all these people you made friends with. And just like I was saying, Bob Oakley, we met in training, and we're still friends today. My closest friends are Larry Cole and Lewis Martin and Bryce Green. They all at some point came to Central when I was there. During the 10 years I was there, they came right out of training. We became friends. We're still friends today. I mean, and it gets to the point where the people you knew in the fire department are almost the only people you associate with, pretty much. And that, I don't think that has changed, because I talk to some of the young people now, and they meet people on the fire service, especially their classmates that they went through training with, and they pretty much keep up with each other. You study together, you try to advance through the ranks together, and your careers are kind of paralleled, and you've got someone to talk to. You can always find a conversation with them. I can remember Central, and like I said, Central, we had 2 engine companies and 2 ladder companies and a rescue truck and a power unit and a sandwich unit. All this rode out of one place. So we had about anywhere from 20 to 25 people there every day. And if anybody needed, I'll never forget, guys got together one day and went down and put a new roof on my parents' house. It was this kind of stuff that you do. You say, hey, somebody knows how to do something. And if you have something to do, you say, look, I need some guys to help me. My mom or my parents or my grandparents need a roof, or they need a well dug, or they need a field plowed. Guys will leave work and come help you. Well, like I said, from what I can gather, is still there. The guys that I know, just like John McCoy, I know he worked for Sears. He did appliance repair. He did lawnmower repair. Right today, if something wrong with lawnmower, something wrong with wash machine or something, I call him. I mean, he's retired, but he still knows how to do it. I can call him and he'll come do it. It's always there, and you may not see or talk to someone in months, but all you gotta do is call and you get back to talking, and all that was good, and it continues today. I do. Remember I was telling you, when I was first hired, after we got through the paperwork and stuff, I got to Station 5, Truck 5, a little after 1 o'clock, and we'd gone over equipment, truck, and this kind of stuff. The captain had told me if we get a call, you stay with Sarge Alexander. That was his name. And about 3 hours after I was there, we had a working house fire. Now, I hadn't been through training, barely knew how to get on the truck. And we had a working house fire about 3 hours after I was there. And the captain said, stick with Sarge. And boy, I stuck with him. I was on him like a tack. But on that first call, I got to be on the nozzle, got to climb a ladder, I got to cut electrical service to the house. That was something the fire department used to do years ago. If a house was burning and it was pretty well involved, we cut the electrical service to it, either pull the meter or cut the wires. We actually cut the wires in this house. And of course the rookie had to do it. Rookie, go up that ladder and cut them wires. And they'd tell me how to do it. So one day they'd tell me, pull these apart, cut this one first, this one first, and cut the middle one last. Could have been lit up like a candle, but they told you how to do it, and of course later on we quit doing that. If I remember correctly, medical calls, the department didn't actually start running medical calls until after we put the squads in service. And I was already a captain right out of Station 4. And the only thing I can remember about medical calls is there was great resistance from the men on the fire department to ride them. They said if I wanted to be a paramedic or EMT, I'd join the ambulance service instead of the fire department. It was great resistance. So we have to give attaboys to the guys that initially got on the squad, because they took most of the medical calls, but occasionally an engine would have to answer one because the department took up first responder. But this had to be in the mid-70s, I would think, before we actually started riding them. And it was a great thing, because without medical calls, I don't know if the fire service could have survived for the lack of calls. Some of my biggest calls, I've got to go back to the first call I had as an active driver. Once I was assigned to Engine 2, Central Station Engine 2, the captain was Paul Brown, because the driver was Raymond, and there was Gary Falk was on there, so it was for us. And the captain told me, he said, now after you've been here a month or so, and you've learned your territory, you know the truck, and he would know that I knew this stuff by checking with the driver. So after I'd been on Engine 2 about a month, maybe a month and a half, it was my day to drive, first day to drive. I was there all day, we didn't get a call. Getting toward 5:30, 6 o'clock, call come in. You gotta remember, at Central Station, it was different than the other stations. We had a bell that sounded 6 times. Bam, 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 we were getting a call. And when Central Station answered the call, Engine 1, Engine 2, Truck 1, Truck 2, Engine 4, Engine 5, Truck 5, if it was downtown, so they started calling out companies. I said, golly, my foot's jumping like crazy on the clutch. I said, we got to call downtown. And it's my first call. I go to the station in front of the truck and just look east. God, all I could see is smoke. It was a big 2-story house on South Eugene Street, burning. And I get on the truck. We had a rule: if we turned right out of the station, Engine 2 would lead. If we turned left, Engine 1 would lead. That's how. And Engine 1, Engine 2, Truck 1, Truck 2, we go like that. So Engine 1, Engine 2, we start down Green Street, turn on, we turn and kept saying, hold back a little. Engine 1's going to catch a hydrant. and we catch it. You know, there's people jumping out of second-story windows. There's a second two-story house right beside the one that's burning, and I said, hold back a little. So I get out. Finally we stop and get out the truck, put my truck blocks down, and Raymond and Woody Parrish, they both caught the hydrant. These are seasoned people, but they caught the hydrant that day, and they didn't put a gate valve on because both engines was catching the same hydrant. And so when I got off the truck, water was already in my hose bed because Captain told me to hold back a little bit. And you heard those saying, you know, you run it back at the truck, you look, you run back to the pump panel, you run back and forth, you ain't done nothing. Captain Brown come around the truck and say, "Oh, see, where's the water?" And at that time, anytime we asked them downtown, and the assistant chief, Chief Honeycutt, he was the chief, assistant chief, and they asked him, the fire district calls, and he'd come around the truck too and told Captain Brown, said, if we don't get some water on this, he talked slow, Captain, if we don't get some water on this exposed resident, we're gonna lose both these houses. So he's coming again, and I'm thinking, golly, Raymond came and he said, hey, we packed the hose so tight on those old trucks. He said, it's water can't be more than one fold in there. He put the hose clamp on, pulled it out, we had water, everything's going great. Tommy Morrison, he was driving on engine 1. Oh, he's following his feeder line back. We had 3-inch hose, so we had laid it. And he says, all I got is 2.5 inches, and I got a 2.5. And she said, but my water's restricted. So he's following his feeder line. Oh, see, you sitting on my feeder line. Engine 2, we're there pulling, I'm sitting right on top of him. He said, move that truck. I said, as much trouble I had getting water, I ain't about to move this truck. So he got up and just let it roll off his hose. But anyway, long story short, that was my first fire, and something happened after the fire. I mean, we actually had a fire death. We rescued some people. We didn't lose the house. We didn't lose the exposed house right beside it, but the house was gutted. And of course, because of my initial guffaw, when we first got there, I was feeling kind of small when we got back to the station about 11:30, 12 o'clock that night. And so I'm sitting at the table, you know, my head down, and this is when Chief Honeycutt, and I kept this with me my entire career. He said, the person that doesn't do anything seldom makes a mistake. He said, and if that's the only mistake you ever make, you'll be all right. And I kept that. You know, he said, it's the person that doesn't do anything that never makes a mistake. And if that's the biggest mistake you ever make, you'll be all right.
Chief Honeycutt was
Chief Honeycutt, he's the one who told me that, and I told that to a bunch of people during my career. Said, hey, you know, you're gonna make some errors if you do something. Another call I remember is the Carolina Theater fire. Of course, here again, riding out of engine 4, we answered downtown because we was the first ones there. This is where the a lady was burned, and there was fire in the hose reel room, and you had to go through the side and up 5 or 6 flights of stairs to get up there. And the heat was so great, we got to probably the second landing of the stairs, and I said, hey, I can't go no further. But luckily, by that time, Squad 5, and I never remember, Brad Cox was right, Squad 5 then, he and Rick Gentry, they came and said, Captain, get up in that nozzle. And they took the nozzle, went on up, hit the fire. But anyway, that was one. Another one was the old saying is, when the bear got loose. This is when I was battalion chief right out of Station 8, and we had this fire. It was an apartment fire, probably 10 units, 2-story apartment complex. Fire in one end. Burning, we get there, and just a fire coming through the roof in one little spot. Coast relay lines. Companies pull off hose, engine 4 and engine 11, and they put the fire out. So Chief Brown, Mike Brown, he was riding the car too, so he come over and see if he could assist us in it. So he come and get in the back of car 3, and so I'm sitting in the car, if you can imagine, I'm sitting like this, and he's sitting in the back. So I turn around and I say, Chief Brown, this is how Battalion 3 does it. We come, we put hose on the ground, we put the fire out. We ready to go on back to the station, you know. And there's a flicker in my glasses, you know. And I turn around and look, and about 6 units, 6 apartments down from where we had the fire, I could see just a flicker of flame coming through the roof. I called back Captain Waters, who's riding engine 4. I said, Captain Waters, come outside. I said, there's something burning about 6 apartments down from where you're at. He said, oh no, Chief, we still got guys in the attic. We're doing overhaul. And we were actually taking up hose. I give them a signal 50. I said, Captain Waters, there's something burning. I said, I don't know what it is. It started raining, and I said, well, come here and look, just look. And in about 2 or 3 minutes, that little flicker had turned into a hole. And we'd gone from signal 50 to car 3 dispatch a second alarm to this call. And Nix was captain on engine 8, and you know, it's about 1 o'clock at night by this time. And he told the lady, said, he said, I know Chief ain't calling us over there to do overhaul. That's what they thought. But they rounded a hill, and all you could see was fire. I said, what in the world? And at that time, Larry Cole was assistant chief, and so of course the second alarm, assistant chief come, and by that time, you know, we had evacuated people, but everybody gone back in the apartment, and then we had to get everybody back out again. And first thing Chief said when he got there, he said, "Oh, see, what in the world's happened?" I said, "Chief, sometime you get the bear, sometimes the bear gets you." And the last one I've mentioned, and I say it only because everybody knows Chief Parker, he's passed now, but Jim Parker used to always, we used to call it, I said, he'd ride around and try to find calls.
Creek chief.
Yeah, creek chief. He'd find more calls in the creek. But one of his other ones was, he'd always strategize how he would handle a fire in the switching yard of the train station there in Pomona train station. And so I told him later, I said, I got your fire, but we had about 9 o'clock at night, we were sitting there at 8 and get the call come in and says, train fire in the train yard, Pomona train yard. Golly, so you know, everybody's thinking, oh, golly. We get there, sure enough, there was a boxcar. It was full of new automobiles. And I don't know how it got started, but anyway, all the automobiles in the boxcar was burning. But there was a gasoline tanker right beside the boxcar. And so that was another one. I mean, hazmat, everything was involved. And so the thing between Park and I, he was chief on the shift there at 3. And I said, hey, I got your call. And we'd always laugh about it. He said, I strategized that call my whole career almost. Well, and it's kind of personal. It was heartbreaking because, you know, as you advance through your career, you begin to know people. This was during Chief Powell's time when he was chief, and we knew he was kind of an autocrat. I mean, when he sent out a general order, or when he made a decision on something, I mean, there was no discussion. This is how the department was going. This is the direction it was going. So I was up for promotion, and I'll never forget. It was I was doing the oral presentation. There was a question on the process that says a new general order has come out changing some kind of procedure or policy, and the question was, how much latitude would you allow older officers to comply with the new general order? And I was working with older officers. That's all I worked with, and I knew change in the fire service was hard, especially for older people that's used to doing things a certain way. You know, allow them time to get used to stuff. So in the oral presentation, I said that. But now, you get your second interview where you have to go before the chief and his two deputies, and just like y'all sitting in front of me, they're sitting in, if you can visualize Chief Powell sitting behind his desk, and he's leaned forward and he asked, and it came back to me crystal clear. It was almost like the same question. I've sent out a general order. How much latitude would you allow an old officer to comply? Before I said, now, does he want me to say it again, or did I not answer it right? You know, just going through my head. So I pretty much answered the same way I said it before, and when he leaned back in his chair, I knew. I said, oh no, I said the wrong thing. I didn't give him the answer he was expecting to get. So that was disappointing. Okay. Needless to say, I didn't get promoted. Some of my proudest moments was toward the end of my career when I actually went to training and was able to see new recruits as they were hired. In fact, just be involved in hiring, and that was good because you got to see them raw. And then when they progressed through the 16 weeks, instead of 6 weeks, now we're up to 16 weeks of training. You know, they and you see marked differences in them. That's a proud moment.
Okay.
Dealing with fire deaths, and thank God we don't have them in the city like we used to. But like I was telling you, my first fire death was my first call driving engine 2. Mm-hmm. My second was almost the first night it was in the wintertime in February when I was captain and was assigned to engine 4. I'll never forget, that day, during the day, we were talking about my first fire death. And sure enough, that night, about 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, we got a call. It didn't seem like a big call. A house fire. I mean, we ride down the street and see fire. It's like probably a 4-room house, a little small house right off Benboy Road, South Benboy Road. And back in there, I can't remember the street name now. But so we lay line, pull off 1.5 inches, go to the door, and you try to open the door, it push in and come back on you. You know, you notice, oh, there's somebody behind this door. And sure enough, this was my first fire death at age 4, and it was really sad, and you have to deal with it. You have to you have to rationalize it in your brain. Because this guy, his TV was sitting in front of the window, and like he was across the room from it, and the door was kind of beside the TV. And this guy got up from his chair and was able to get just to the door, but his clothes and skin was left in the chair, so he had pretty much burned before he actually got out of the chair. So stuff like that weighs heavy on you. And then, I don't think it was that year, but in 1 year, there was 9 fire deaths in the city, and Engine 4 C shift answered all 9 of them. And that, well, it still bothers me. You know, so you got to prioritize, but we did everything we knew to do. And that was, and it gets to that later, you know, you tell people, know your job, know that you've done the best that you knew how when you're called on, because people's lives depend on you.
What about?
During my career, let's see, of course, my mentor, Raymond, was probably the first fireman death.
Raymond who?
Cockman. Raymond Cockman was probably the first, but there were Jesse Gray. When I came to Central, Jesse, like I came, Jesse had just died that end of December, and I came like the first of the year, but he, and I was assigned to Engine 2, they trucked it back over. Jesse Gray, Lynn McLaughlin, he worked at Central, and he passed while we were all working there at Central. And That's always hard. But as far as being killed in the line of duty, Raymond was the only one, and Jesse, Coach Jesse was, but I didn't know Jesse at the time. And Raymond was if you want to say, the type of unofficial leader before he made captain, he was driver, that every rookie needed to work with. He was smart, he was a competitor. He probably would have advanced quicker if he didn't speak his mind. I mean, Raymond did that through a story I'll tell about Raymond, because, and this is another story about Jim Parker too, because a general order, and I think I've got it in my thing, came out that this was during Chief Powell's time, when we had to record X number of hours of productivity every day. Productivity says you got to show 8 hours of productive work every day at the station. So I'll never forget this like yesterday. So the captain called us, it was me, Raymond, and Parker, Captain Parrish, E.C. Parrish. We're going to go over this general order just come out, and it says we got to show 8 hours of productivity every day. Now keep in mind, we're at Central, 25 guys there. The drivers on the companies took care of the truck, mopped it, swept, mopped the apparatus floor, wiped down the truck, checked the equipment, all that stuff. Take about 30 minutes, 45 at the most, to do all this. So the captain's sitting there talking, going on. And Raymond says, Captain, let me ask you this. Are you saying what generally takes me about 15 to 30 minutes to do, I'm going to have to record 8 hours? Yes, that's what the general order said. I ain't going to do it. And this is Raymond. Raymond said, I'm not going to do it. Raymond, what do you mean you're not going to do it? I'm not going to say it takes me 8 hours to do what it normally takes me 15 minutes and no more than 30 minutes to do. Well, I'll write you up, Raymond. You'll have to write me up, Captain, because I'm not doing it. And this was just prior to him making captain. We said, Raymond, you need to quit all that talking. He said, well, I'm not going to do it. That's just crazy. The only thing I would have done different, and the only thing I advise people to do is, and I call it glass ceilings, is get your education early. When we came on the department, you pretty much just had to have a high school diploma or GED. But to advance in a department, you had to get at least, well, when I left, you had to have at least an associate degree. And now I think it's a bachelor's degree, or maybe even a master's to become deputy or chief. So get your education early. It's hard, and the department work with you, and GTCC and A&T both, they all work with your schedule so you could you could advance your education. But once you're on the department, you're working, you get married, you have kids, your responsibilities, it's hard to go back to school. You just don't have the time to do it. And it becomes a glass ceiling over your career to where, hey, you can see where you want to go, but you can't get there because you don't have the time to get the education. So education, I would say, is primary, and luckily and not so luckily, because a lot of the new hires have college degrees. It's in different fields, and I think that's where some of the camaraderie fades. They're not in a chosen career path. You know, they're just doing something because of the job, and it's not because they actually wanted to be on the fire department. I think that might explain some of I think we started the conversation by saying, where is the camaraderie and brotherhood and all that stuff. I think some of it's there is that we're hiring better educated firefighters, but they're working initially their job as a firefighter just as a job. It's not their career because it's not in the field of study that they went to college for. And as soon as something better comes, they'll take it. That we didn't have years ago. Well, probably the most significant was we went from 24 on, 24 off to 24/48, the hour change. And it's been adjusted. And the other thing is overtime pay. When you work more than, I don't remember the exact number of hours you work now, but overtime pay and hirebacks. All this was unheard of. Fact is, years ago, and I did it once, there was a thing they called 5 hours you had to work. If you came to work late, meaning if you wasn't there in uniform before the bell sounded at 8 o'clock, you were late. If you ever missed a call, you had to stay at work the next day 5 hours. You had to work, and you didn't get paid for it. So they got 5 hours. I did it once. This is when I was through training, but I was still at Station 5, and golly, I woke up about 20 minutes to 8. Just, golly, I ain't got quite the time. I got to work about 5 minutes after 8. Captain never said anything to me. This is Captain Cothran until about 6 o'clock that afternoon. He said, "OC, I mean, you know you're going to have to work 5 tomorrow." I said, "All right, Captain, I'll stay here. I'll be here." Know what you want. What I would say to every firefighter is, first and foremost, learn your job. Lives depend on it. Second, take ownership and be an integral part in all functions of the department. You know, participate in all extracurricular activities of the department. Enjoy every day of your job. And like I said, just enjoy it. Know your job and enjoy it, and fellowship with the people whose lives depend on you. Okay, I came on the department 2 years after the department had integrated. And so I got to meet the guys of the 1961 class who were all at the segregated Station 4. Charles Galloway was one of the first black firefighters I met, and I met him at Station 5. And they, all during my career, were kind of like my mentors, telling me what to do, how to do it. Leo Caldwell, a lot of folks never really got to understand Leo, but he was a great person. He was a smart person, and but he constantly felt underappreciated by the department. During the time when, if you can imagine, a training class getting out of training and they'll assign certain ones as leader, or leader was the same thing as captain, and put them at companies, and then when they integrated the department, these leaders were assigned drivers. Like during that time, there were no tests given for positions. You were assigned driver, you were assigned captain, you even assigned battalion chief. All the leaders was assigned as drivers at the companies that they were assigned to, but Leo wasn't. He wasn't because he didn't have a driver's license at the time. That never quite stuck through his head that, Leo, it's not that the department did you wrong, it's that we couldn't assign you driver without a driver's license. But anyway, and during my early years, after I left 5, we used to have what we called, there was a position called rover. I mean, there were like 15 to 20 people that was assigned rover, so I roved for about a year, and I would work with Leo. That's how I got to meet Leo. Now, Charles was the first one, Leo was probably the second one. I got to meet that was from there. And all this stuff, if you can imagine a mentor telling you, son, these are things you need to do to advance in a department. There was no bitterness, there was no nothing with them talking to me. Same way with Charlie McCoy. Charlie was one of the first classes, but he was either second or third, but he was assigned to Station 4 when it was still an all-black station. And so he knew, and I met Charlie because we lived close together at one time when I first came on the department. And all these guys, you know, up until Charlie and Liam Caldwell passed, we stayed in touch. You know, and Charlie, I still call Charlie all the time. I talked to him last week. They provided you with what you needed to maneuver through the intricacies of being on a department. But leadership starts at the top. Chief Powell was an autocrat. I mean, I mention him a lot because even before he was chief, when he was deputy, he pretty much was running things. I mean, and people knew, regardless to what your political affiliation is or was, regardless of what your religious affiliation is or was, you kept it at home. You come to work, you're a firefighter. You work for the city of Greensboro, everybody's the same. We live that. And I used to tell, and I lived by it too. I never kept my feelings on my shirt sleeve. I never taught religion, and I never taught politics at work. And I would tell young guys, I said, look, don't get pulled into telling all these jokes and stuff. I said, nobody comes to work with the intent of offending somebody, because when that alarm sounds, you may be the very person that have to pull them out of a building. Yeah. You know, so you know this and you knew this, but ultimately you knew that it wouldn't tolerate it from the top. And just like you were talking about brotherhood, and this Melissa's dad, now we were all at Central all at one time together, we were all rookies. And we had this thing where it was but maybe one or two guys married at that time. And so every weekend we'd go to a different person's house and have a party, you know, and just get together away from work. It went on for a long time. You know, all the young guys, we'd go to, hey, so I've been to Pleasant Garden down out there, and hey, we'd have parties, and we really had a good time. And like I said, you had to. Now, Chief Manus, and I forgot to tell you this, when I was a rover, you know, Chief Manus was my captain one time. He was our roving captain. Now, he loved to, there was nothing he couldn't do. He could speak foreign languages, he could do sign languages and all that stuff. And he'd tell us as rovers, he says, now, it's not your cut day at every station you go to. He said, if somebody tell you when you go in roving it's your cut day, you call me. I'll get him straight. He said, I'm y'all's captain. Yeah. He said, because a lot of times if you're roving, as soon as you went in the door, it's your cut day. You got to cut. But now, camaraderie, and there's nothing wrong with having work friends. There are people that you're close with at work, but they're work friends. I mean, you don't socialize with them outside of work. I mean, there's a lot of times there's no need to. There's and Raymond we used to talk about that a lot, and this was kind of his philosophy. He said, and you got to remember, you know, this was the 60s and the early 70s, and he said, hey, we're friends. Raymond had been on my house a couple times doing, he did my driveway and stuff, brought his tractor and all that stuff over there and done it. All these things, but I don't think, and I went to his house a couple times, but we didn't like socialize. Now Cliff Oakley and Bob Oakley and I never did, but Cliff, Bob's brother, we were single, during the time, and we used to double date some, and have a great time. Larry and Lewis used to tell me, "Oh, see, I know you'd enjoy everything." I said, "I did. I had a good career. I enjoyed even the Suitcase Johnson days. If it hadn't been for that, I'd have never had an opportunity to meet the people I met at Station 5.
Okay.
And never had a chance to meet the folks. When I first went to 15, I worked with Rain Camp and Robert Davis, older guys. That was my first experience actually supervising older people, and it was totally different than having go-getters who would go out and do stuff. And but you wouldn't have had an opportunity to do things. And you know the old saying, you know, one door closes and another opens, and just go at it with a good attitude, and usually you learn something from it. Yeah. And that's what I pretty much did.
We hope you enjoyed watching these documentaries. It was our goal to share and preserve the memories of our retired Greensboro firefighters. It is our desire that these documentaries will inspire future generations to continue the brotherhood, sisterhood, and camaraderie while always striving for excellence in their careers. While fire apparatus, equipment, and technology have improved, several things will always remain the same. The courage and bravery it takes to mitigate natural and man-made disasters will always be a part of the job. Although our retirees are no longer a physical part of the GFD world, a giant piece of each retiree's memories have been shared with you today. These memories will be in their hearts and minds forever. A special thank you goes out to Captain Harold Haney for his many long hours of recording and editing. Thank you, Harold. A job well done.